for a while, I ran the human performance shop at Special Operations Command Central. And that's where I was always passionate about it, but that's where kind of hanging out with the guys and gals every day for 6-7 years.
Sure, getting to know them, hearing their stories.
Yeah. And you know, you really learn a lot about the sacrifices.
Yeah.
And that's where it's like, man, the least we can do is lean in here and do the absolute best we can to support them.
Welcome to Money Market, a Bank of Tampa podcast. We highlight the businesses, expert business advice, the local economy, and points of interest in the Tampa Bay market. Follow us on YouTube, Spotify, Apple, and wherever you find all your podcasts. And make sure you like, follow, subscribe, and share this episode with a friend or colleague. I am your host, Owen LaFave, the Pinellas County Market President for the Bank of Tampa, Tampa Bay's oldest and largest community bank. Once again, you may notice we're in our St. Pete office where there's construction going on next door, so hopefully it won't interfere with the podcast or our guest today, Jim Godin, who is the Senior Director of Performance Physical Therapy at Exos. Jim is responsible for the integration of performance therapy and other performance disciplines, including strength and conditioning, diet, sports nutrition, performance pathology. Jim is also a member of the NFL Players Association Pain Management Committee, and Exos, who the team helps support active and retired duty through the Accelerated Return to Duty program. That is a lot, Jim, and I'm excited to have you on Money Market.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure.
So, I mean, you work with extreme athletes. I mean, I mentioned the NFL Players Association, but, you know, also high performing executives. I mean, what's the biggest misconception about professionals have about physical performance and their connection to mental clarity and health?
Yeah, I think there's a misconception that they do it differently, right? Okay. In terms of there's a red pill. But the reality of it is, whether it's a soft operator, a Navy SEAL, or Green Beret, a first-round draft pick, and then an MLB guy or a CEO. Realistically, it comes down to game plans. Mm-hmm. And the way in which we look at it within the company is we look at the model of human performance. So we break it down to the human, and then we kind of build backwards and retrofit it based on what they need. At the base is kind of foundational characteristics, right? So we kind of put this human theoretical construct. At foundational characteristics, that's where like genetics live and demographics and injury history, things we can't touch.
Okay.
We go one level up, and that's psychological drivers. This one kind of matters because we can have some impact. That's kind of where values turn into goals, right? Above that, this is where classically people think Exos lives, although it's just a piece of it, is performance capacity, and that's like your measurables. So for our combine guys, like they're 40, they're bench press, they're 5'10", 5.
Right.
It could also be gut microbiome, right? So it lives in different places. Mm-hmm. And then if we look at the top of that model of human performance, the top is functional state. And what we say is like, that's a percentage of what their performance capacity they can access at that moment. So for instance, the way we prepare them for their moment that matter, NFL, if they're going to combine, you got to run fast,
right?
You got to run real fast, fastest you've ever run.
Right.
If you are a CEO and you're going to go deliver a message to the board, you got to bring it. So I think the misconception is there's like a red pill or there's a quick way to do it. The reality is you have to have a foundational game plan that factors in the whole human, and it's unique to every single person that walks in the door.
So, I mean, where do you start from the base level? I mean, because if you're talking about an NFL athlete, I mean, the physical performance obviously is far advanced versus, you know, a CEO. Most CEOs, I mean, there are some exceptions to the rules, but I mean, where do you start just from a baseline to understand that foundational health level?
Yeah. So we start with questionnaires. You have to have a firm conversation. Like we always say, we use a 2-ear, 1-mouth approach. And so we ask open-ended questions so we can understand what they've done, where they're currently at, and where they want to go. And then we can start layering in more objective tests. Like I said, we can do some, nutritional sensitivity type testing, right? We can do our performance body fat. Objectives that you can then attach goals to. And like we were talking before we started, like, you have to understand their why. If you don't understand their why, you can't get to that second level, which is psychological drivers, right? We don't know their values, kind of their motivations, and then ultimately their goals. And then we can kind of weave in those psychological drivers with the objective measures. Hey, here's where you're at. How can we help you get to where you want to go? And then the functional state's kind of cool because it's not like we're not baking a cake, right? Like we can give the ingredients, but you have to be there along the journey to help coach them along the way. Because as any human knows, if you've had a goal of running a marathon or getting your body fat down or even blood pressure, like it's not linear. We're not linear beings. So helping them along the way is crucial.
So finding that why, I mean, people are coming to you with a specific goal typically. Do you find that as you're trying to dig the layers down, that the why maybe isn't always necessarily consistent with what they're telling you?
Yes. And I'd say more so than that, the why is pretty deep, right? So why a guy wants to run their fastest 40, obviously so they get drafted higher, right? But there might be a lot of drivers in their back end pocket like, hey, this is going to uplift my family who doesn't have too much. Like I'm going to make generational changes if I can change this thing, right? And that's the cool part of it. And then sometimes, like there's some realities like what's your performance capability? What's your goal? What's your why? Well, if there's disconnects, it's our job to connect them, right? We always say there's a red thread between everything we do. It's our job to help them get there and kind of make what they need, what they want, and vice versa.
So that motivating factor, tapping into that, how much of what you do is coaching, mindset, resiliency when you have setback?
Yeah.
Where does that come into the mix?
100%. So the level set out of the gates is crucial. So they have to understand there's nothing linear about what we're going to do. Whether you're training, you might have a little, tweak here and there. It's okay as long as we decatastrophize it very quickly, right? So sometimes when the brain gets rolling, something that's mild becomes severe. And then all of a sudden, this little tweak of a hammy starts impacting sleep. And then all of a sudden, that diet compliance falls off because you're like, well, I'm not sleeping. I'm really hungry at night and I can't train. So now I'm bummed.
Right.
And all of a sudden, this goes into a spiral. So our job is to get ahead of the spiral. Hey, tweaked your hammy? Not a big deal. Let's get over here. Here's why you need to lean into your nutrition. Let's go talk to the dietitian so they understand, hey, maybe we got to get collagen, within 20 minutes of your workout or 50 minutes with some vitamin C. Like you need to lean in on your micronutrients, right? Your fruits and vegetables. Hey, let's go talk and let's make sure your sleep's getting on. And how can we help with that, right? We have a partnership with Brainlet. Maybe we get you underneath and get some melatonin in. Like, let's reset your circadian rhythm. So I'll say, like, how do we jump in and stop it from spiraling? And that's really coaching.
Can you coach resilience?
I think you can lean into it.
Okay.
So every human's a little different, right? And if you understand their why and their driver, I do believe you can help coach resilience. I also think you can help impact it negatively, right? So by putting too much priority on one thing, right? If you put everything in that cup and that cup happens to spill over,
right?
Well, then they've attached themselves to a thing, a theoretical construct that you've helped create, and then the spiral goes fast. Versus if you're say, hey, here's you as a human, here's all these different cups. If that cup spills over, well, you still got like 12 more, right?
Right.
So I think you can negatively impact it as well as positively impact it.
Okay. I've always heard like the analogy of the leg of the stool, right? I mean, there's 4, if you lose 1, you're okay. If you lose 2, you're in trouble.
Right.
I like the idea of having 12.
Yeah. Listen, I'm going to take 12.
Yeah. It's a lot more stable. So in terms of active movement and cognitive load. So I know a lot of high performing executives, entrepreneurs in my world that you look at and they're not in the best shape. They're focused on their business. They're not focused on their body, maybe not necessarily their mental performance. But some of them are extremely high performers. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, can you talk a little bit about the connection between the two?
Yeah. I think there's like the old saying, right? Like you live the first part of your life trying to gain your wealth and the rest of it trying to regain your health, right? If we can get that to folks quickly, I think we can interject before they end up on the back end of that. But there are some realities, right? Like if you want to be at your best, like we know X amount of sleep, 7 to 9 hours, depending on where you're at in your cycles, usually lands you at a better performance. Like if you're poorly hydrated, that also negatively impacts your performance. If you're poorly fueled, right? You went out the night before, that kind of falls in that functional state, what we talked about earlier in that model of human performance. We're usually able to show them an easy example is like, hey, if you're a marathon runner, we're going to do the Boston Marathon together, right? I'm probably not doing that tomorrow. But when you go up there, like if you have a beautiful flight, you go from Tampa to Boston, Logan, direct shot, you get a good night's sleep, you're well hydrated because you didn't let the desert kick in on the flight. Like you've taken some probiotics and some zinc before your flight so you don't get sick. You land, you get a nice night's sleep, you show up, you're ready to roll, right? Versus we ate a pizza, we didn't drink anything except for alcohol on the flight there. Like our functional state, our capacity to tap into our total potential is down. When we talk to executive level folks, sometimes that resonates because everybody wants to tap into the most that they can.
Right.
So there's two buckets. There's like, hey, what's your why? Do you have children, grandchildren that you want to play with? Well, we can lean in there and help you. Or if you just want to nail a meeting, kind of that whole paradigm we talked about where you live in that functional state also matters. So we have to find out the why and then where we can lean in best to support it.
Okay. So if there was someone approached you and I mean, you need like one quick win, like what is one small habit that you typically go to?
Hydration. Yeah, because it's easy. Well, I say it's easy, right? But the reality of it is, like, if you get dehydrated, your mental and physical performance goes down. But asking somebody to drink, give or take the environment, an ounce per pound of body weight isn't a huge ask.
Okay.
Versus saying, hey, block the blue light, get yourself in bed by 9:30 p.m., get yourself up at the same time, whether it's week or weekend. Sometimes that becomes eyewash for folks. They just don't want to hear it. Mm-hmm. But if you say, hey, can you just go ahead and drink an ounce per pound of body weight for now?
So is that the recommendation? I mean, it used to be like 8 glasses of water a day.
Yeah.
And now, I mean, you see, virtually every woman is carrying around like a giant Stanley, or you see people walking around with the 32 ounces. And
it's easy. Yeah. And that's kind of where it falls.
Okay.
Obviously, depending on activity level and environment, like Florida right now is a little different than like, I was going to say Maine, although it was 100 degrees up there last week too. But depending on your environment, about an ounce per pound usually works.
Okay.
Yep.
No, that's, good rule of thumb.
It's easy.
That seems doable.
Yeah. And nobody has to think about it, right? Versus, was it 64 ounces or is it 9? It's just an ounce per pound. Keep it simple.
Okay. All right. So movement. I mean, there's a lot of conversation about getting people into that zone 2 cardio for kind of optimal cardio performance. I recently saw that at an incline on a treadmill is better than running over some period of time. I mean, what is your recommendation there?
The good news is like a lot of the most recent research is so democratized now with like the Hubermans of the world, right?
Yeah.
And zone 2 is a really nice base. There's a ton of metabolic and cardiovascular components and benefits there for physical and brain. For an aging population, I really like what you just talked about with the incline walking, right? And we actually have been hacking that for a while in terms of people getting back to running. Because it gets your wattage up, like your total power has to increase because you're going up, which will help with posterior chain tendinous issues or structures and muscles without the pounding and the ground reactive forces of running, right? So you can get a lot of the same power generating components of running while walking on incline without the pounding on your joints, which can be a huge positive, again, for folks that might have a little bit more wear on the tires. When you're 17, not much matters, right? You can do just about anything. I say that loosely because some people really push to the extreme and be quite fine, right? When you're 40, 45, like sometimes you got to be a little smarter about it, right? And then that allows you to have bigger left and right parameters. So if you're running for a more aged population, we like to say it's like lifting like a 10% increase, for acute on chronic. So if you ran 3 miles and that's your max, don't go run 6. That would represent a humongous jump in load.
Okay.
Walking on incline, like you could probably push a little bit and be quite fine.
Okay.
Yeah.
Talk to me about runner's high. Because I did run a marathon last year.
Did you?
And it's I won't say it was a disaster, but first marathon ever.
Yeah.
I wasn't a runner up until then. So my wife and I do a challenge every year. And so we've climbed Mount Baker. We did this thing called Everesting 29 where you climb a mountain as many times as it takes to equal Everest. Nice. You got to do it in 36 hours. Our challenge last year was the Jungfrau Marathon in Switzerland, which, to do a first marathon in Florida, training where it's flat to try to go into the Swiss Alps, not a good move. We made it 20 miles, we missed our cutoff by 10 minutes. Never got runner's high. Never happened. So where I can go out for, a 5-mile walk in a weighted vest, and I almost feel, I don't have that sense of euphoria, but it almost feels like meditation.
Yeah. Where
I don't get that in running. I mean, talk to me about runner's high.
Yeah, I'll be honest. I'm probably not the SME on runner's high.
Okay.
I've never run a marathon.
Okay.
But there are some realities to it. And I would like to dig in, who knows, right? We could probably dig in literature and see like if there's some frequencies within brainwaves that kick in. But to your point, they do land on some relatively meditative, clear thinking, when they're doing it. Some people just go and like they have the most clear thought of their life, and that's kind of their report of runner's high. And I think to your point, whether it's a weighted vest walk, right, or sitting in a trance with meditation and you get into a particular brainwave, like I think that is what runner's high would be.
Okay. Maybe I'm doing myself a disservice because I tried to do it 30. I'm 47. And I realized I hated it. I only got to like 10 to 12 miles then, but I spent as much time going through my playlist because I would get bored as I did training. And so finally I was like, the heck with this. Now I have podcasts. So that was great for training, but I will tell you, like when I walk, I don't necessarily listen to anything. And that's where I've got this great clarity of thought. So maybe I just need to lose the.
Well, I was gonna say, I'm the weirdo too, that I don't wear headphones when I run, right?
Okay.
Or take long walks.
Yeah. Or
quite frankly, even long car rides. Sorry, on the podcast thing. And I think there's some clarity of thought there, right? We're so fast in everything we do now that it just allows you to slow it down. And you can really, some of my best thinking happens when, full disclosure, my cap's about a 5K. Okay. So when I'm out there, probably way too long for a 5K, I'll leave the time off. But that's when I have my best thinking.
I'd say, well, I mean, don't be hard on yourself for the 5K because I've decided that was the perfect time frame. So after I ran the marathon, and I told my wife, I'm like, I'll never run any more than a 5K. Yeah. So, fast forward 17 years later, where she's like, let's run a marathon. I'm like, you are out of your mind.
I love it.
So we want to talk about fasted workouts.
Okay.
Because this is a little self-serving, but I wake up in the morning. I like to work out in the morning to eat something and then go work out. Now, and I'm not talking about a 10-mile run. I mean, to me, that's something different. You need a little fuel in the body, but go to the gym, lift. Is that okay? Do I need to get some kind of fuel in my body?
Like classically, you would say try to get something in about an hour before, right?
Okay.
I think what the most current literature is showing, as long as you're fed, right, whatever number you want to use, your 0.7 grams per pound of protein per pound of body weight, right? As long as you're a normally fed human over the 24-hour period, you should be quite fine with protein synthesis muscle growth, right? It used to be, really tight on windows, right? Like if you worked out, you had to eat within 30 minutes, right? Like there were all these like time constraint windows. But as the literature is kind of coming out more, it's realistically, as long as you're well fed and get enough macros over a 24-hour cycle, you should be quite fine. Some people don't like to eat before they work out because it creates some GI distress, right? And it's which case...
That's the way I feel.
Yeah. This sounds gross, but if you're like burping stuff up when you're trying to work out, well, you're less likely to work out, which probably is a bigger net negative than fasting and jumping in, right? So as the literature keeps evolving, it does show essentially, as long as you're normally fed over a 24-hour period, you should be quite fine.
Okay. I will tell you, especially on leg day, if I'm doing like just squats in general, or the worst, like leg squats, and after I've eaten, I mean, that's torture.
Yeah. It's something, right? Like you're trying to do two things at once is if you eat too close, right? Or if you eat the wrong things. Yeah. So, the recommendation from the dietitians, usually they'll say, try to get something in before you work out. So your muscles are well fed and you can kind of have good output, maximize yourself. But it's kind of shooter's choice.
Okay. So you would recommend like getting up in the morning, eating, waiting an hour, going into your workout. Okay.
Yep. And then afterwards, get a meal, like a clean meal. You can do the proteins a little faster and you can kind of get cute with those things. But for most folks, as long as you're eating a well-balanced diet over the course of the day, you're going to be pretty well.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. So, I mean, we have a lot of executives that listen to this podcast, a lot of business people, busy. Not everybody wakes up in the morning, but let's say you had 20 minutes of something to do in the morning, you're fasted. Would you recommend that you walk, that you run, you lift some light weights? What would you?
Yeah. So if you just wake up, there's some pieces there, right? So like the PT side of me is like, all right, well, and this is where like you go through your algorithm, the geek, right? The internal geek piece, right? So it's like, all right, well, if you first wake up, your disc pressure is a little high. So that's why when people wake up in the morning, they're usually like a little stiff in the back, right?
Yeah.
There's a dude named Stu McGill, University of Waterloo. He'll talk about it, but like, don't quote me. I guess I'm quoted, but it's like 13 to 15 minutes, right? For that disc pressure to go back to normal, right? Okay. So it's like, all right, get up. We always say, don't bend over, don't stretch out first thing in the morning, right? Just get up, make your coffee, get moving and shaking, read the paper real quick, look at your, Apple News. And then I like a quick bout of mobility, right? To get the joint moving, some knee hugs, some leg cradles, some world greatest stretch. And then I would love for like a 15, 20 minute good walk in the morning. if you're really strapped for time,
Okay.
right? But as we age, what you want to do is create some level of pump in the joints and the tissues, and work to some level of end range. So the mobility work is crucial because you don't want to lose that as you age.
Okay.
Yeah.
What about HIIT training versus weight training? And especially, I would say, again, kind of going back to the executives that might listen to this, a lot of high stress, HIIT workouts, high intensity interval training can be very stressful. Is that a detriment or is that a relief of stress? I mean, how do you look at the two?
Yeah, I think probably different goals, right? Like if your goal is to get very strong, right, you have to have some overload principle. And if you're doing pure high intensity training, it's hard to get that, right? But you do get a great metabolic effect,
right,
when you're doing HIIT training, and you'll keep burning when you're done as well. So like it depends what your goal is. It also kind of talks, we were talking about before, like a wearable is a nice device, right? Because if you're always doing HIIT training and you're not putting anything back in the bank, you're always withdrawing, you might hit a cliff, right? And that's with anything, not just HIIT training, right? So that's where I like some level of informed workout, whether it's an Apple Watch or a Whoop or an Aura. So if your HRV is tanking, you feel tired and your sleep is all of a sudden falling off, like perhaps you need to peel back the HIIT training, right? And do something a little less, quote unquote, stressful. But kind of the informed decision making is huge for that.
A lot of your clients are high performers, both professional athletes as well as executives that care a lot about a lot of these things, and they have kids who they are trying to teach them what's the appropriate way and make sure. Often a lot of them are involved in athletics as well. I mean, what would you recommend to those parents and those clients?
Yeah, that's a great question. It's interesting now. There's such an emphasis on youth sports, right? It's a little different than when you and I were growing up.
Yeah.
I think it's like a multi-billion-dollar industry now, right?
Right.
And if we look at a performance paradigm, when we independent of age, we always look at it as a matrix, right? So if you were to look at the foundational component, it's just basically mobility and stability. And then strength and power, and at the top would be skill, right? That very small sliver of the triangle would be skill. Now you see 8-year-olds that can sling it, and they're hitting bombs. So like
it is wild,
the paradigm's flipped. So now the base is skill, and their foundational characteristics, their mobility and stability is like this little sliver on top. And that's what's getting kids into trouble. And at my shop, we're right across from the baseball fields and the high school and middle school. And we're seeing 13 and 14-year-olds with having Tommy John issues,
right?
A lot of
pitchers. Yeah.
And they create so much power and torque on a little body that isn't developed for it. So I would say as your child is aging, and again, whether that's an 8-year-old or a 14 or 16-year-old, make sure you're dedicating yourself to the basics. Like if you're doing sports 5 days a week, it can't be Taco Bell 5 days a week. Right.
Yeah.
Like you have to give them a performance foundation of nutrition. Nobody's perfect, right? Like that's a reality. My house is not perfect. We do hit Taco Bell every now and again, right? That's a reality. It can't be every night. Like you have to give that child a chance to develop, right? They have to stay hydrated to be safe. I'll highlight that one for Florida, right? Like it's very unsafe when, especially now they've turfed everything and it's like 12,000 degrees.
Yeah.
Especially for children.
Feels like 14,000 degrees.
It's brutal. And like children don't dissipate heat. They dissipate differently, right? So like make sure you hydrate them, and make sure you get them to bed, right? If their sports are taking over their life or they're doing homework till midnight at a young age, you probably need to toggle back a little bit, because if not sleeping, probably not eating, like probably not eating well or hydrating, their whole life is going to take a step back, right? In terms of training, that's where we like to say, at least a lot of the sports now are at a competitive level are doing a solid job of creating some level of foundational mobility and stability, which is like an everyday warm up. Like crawling is a really great thing for a developing athlete to do. It's like cross pattern, has to have some level of proximal stability through midline, right? Jumping, hopping, skipping, like things that are traditional PE things. Well, PE is kind of taking like a back seat now.
Right.
So like you should incorporate that into your daily activities if you're a coach, right? They should be able to jump on 2 legs. They should be able to jump on 1 leg. They should be able to change the direction quickly.
What happened to arm circles?
Dude,
I've arm circles since I was,
Listen, I'm still
grade.
slinging them. And so like those are pieces that you need to pay attention to from a training standpoint. You don't need to, you should get to a spot where the coach understands that at a young age, their number one goal is to understand and control their body in space. It's their number one goal at a young age is not to lift a ton of weight. Right. It's to control their body in 3 planes, on 2 legs, on 1 leg. Can they clearly get up from the ground to standing position very simply in a bunch of different ways? And that will, if you're doing that, the coach is looking at it from the right direction, right? Are you making them run fast? Power is essentially how fast you can express your strength. But they have to have body control before you worry about any of that. So a good program would have a large component of understanding their body and space. A lot of dowels are used for young kids and even older kids. And then they would linearly load them over time. And that's where the tools get kind of cool, right? I don't have Instagram, but you can learn a lot on there. But like really light kettlebells bottom up for kids, for instance, right?
Oh,
it's like a microphone. Like you have them do a lunge or a squat with the bottoms up kettlebell, and if that thing's falling all over the place, perhaps you shouldn't load them up with a bunch of weight because they've just showed you they can't control.
They don't have that strength and stability. Yeah.
So, keep an eye out that if you bring your child to a performance location to help them succeed and not get injured, right? And learn good habits, just probably pay attention to make sure there's a component of, are they making them control their body before they put a whole bunch of weight on their body?
What about like VO2? How does that come into the mix measure?
Yeah. So, I mean, you're relatively born with VO2, right? Like there's some people that will always be really high. Yeah. They'll be higher than I will ever be no matter how much I train, but you can up or down it, right? Like you can become detrained and your VO2 will go down with you, or you can maximize your training load and the VO2 will go up, right?
Is that something that you at Exos monitor and train towards, or is that like a personal goal thing?
We don't necessarily train for that. So for instance, like a lot of our folks have a different intensity need, right? So they need to run a 40 very fast.
Okay.
So training for them for a VO2 doesn't necessarily impact that directly. Yeah. So we'll change our emphasis, right? We don't directly measure it. Though for our more endurance-based folks, we'll help them achieve it through just training load over time. So training in their different intensity zones over time, how they do it, right? So kind of macromeing high ground reactive. So if they're running versus less ground reactive forces, like a verse climber. So how can we get them to achieve their goal while also staying very healthy? So we'll kind of thread that needle.
How is brain chemistry impacted by something like sprinting versus lifting?
I think there's not a huge bolus of studying, right? Like to say, how's the chemistry?
Yeah.
I think the downstream effects would be individualized, right? And I think it's largely based on that person's desire, right? Because desire kind of means will dictate the output. So for instance, if there's a person that hates lifting and you make them lift, right? It's not great.
No, they're probably not going to do it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So you have to, that kind of goes back to the initial part of the conversation where you have to understand psychological drivers, right? And then that will probably impact the brain chemistry or how they're feeling or what their output would be more so than anything.
Okay. No, that makes a lot of sense. Dietary patterns. Let's talk about diet a little bit. They say it's, 70, I don't know if this is true or not. I mean, you could dispel the myth, but it's about 70% of, versus 70% of what you do for your body versus the 30% the activity. Yeah. What do you recommend in terms of a diet?
I think that number checks out anecdotally, right?
Yeah, feels like it does.
Yeah,
right?
Hey, listen, it works for me.
Can't outwork a bad diet, right?
That's a fact. I've lived it. But I would say from a dietary standpoint, it's interesting now, right? Because there are so many things you can do, right? There's ketogenic diet, which has NSW did a lot of research on that way back in the day, right? With the oxygen rebreather and how it allowed them to stand longer. And there's some positive brain impacts there, right? Like there's a gentleman named Doug D'Agostino, and he does a ton of research there, right? There's carnivore diet where people really enjoy that too. And it's kind of cool. Like when you look into it, like I'll play with anything, but I don't eat beef. So it'd be really hard for me to do it, right? Yeah. And then when we go to talk to most dietitians, right? They'll say, hey, all of those are cool. But realistically, it's how you have a sustainable game plan, right? And what that looks like for the folks. And it usually shakes out to, easy acronyms that make sense, or sayings rather. So like, less legs the better for your protein, right? Makes them a little cleaner. Brown's close to the ground, so get a ton of grains, right? Vegetables are fair game. Get a lot of them. Like eat the whole rainbow, because each color has a different nutrient profile that helps, whether it's vasculature or brain or cardiovascular function, right? So while there's a lot of things out there, and I love all of it, because we talked about now, is people are talking about it, which is probably the most important piece from a dietary standpoint.
But there's so much information out there, and some of it conflicts.
Yeah.
It's hard to figure out what to navigate and what. I mean, to me, and I don't know if it's just simple. It's just meat, vegetables, and fruits. Is that fair?
I mean, you're not going to go wrong.
Okay.
Right? Like that's the reality of it. Like, lean meats and proteins, like fish is great, right? Like it doesn't get super complicated. You can make it super complicated. And the reality of it is a lot of particular diets, they can become, and if your goal is weight loss, right? Like they're ultimately a little bit restrictive. So like you're not going to go to the cabinet and be like, do I want this bar or that bar when you're on a carnivore diet, right?
Yeah.
You need like a carnivore snack, right? So from that standpoint, like it'll be relatively restrictive. So it's like a control mechanism to what you're going to put in your body, right? Okay. So depending on what your goal is, and then people have to monitor it, and that goes to like the functional state piece, right? If you're going deep into ketogenic diet and I'm not picking on that one, by the way, I actually think it's pretty cool. Or carnivore diet, again, I think it's pretty cool. But like if your body's not responding, like your sleep's poor, like you generally don't feel well, like you're not recovering from workouts, maybe it's not for you, right? I think how you respond to it, and if you're kind of in tune, or if you have an objective measurement tool, might be pretty impactful.
I've seen some interesting studies and information out there about eating towards your body type and your blood type. Do you put any validity in that?
Maybe.
Okay.
I personally don't know enough about it.
Okay.
To dig in and give you a really good answer on it.
That's fair.
I know some folks will go deep down the rabbit hole, but it's kind of funny. It does seem like it always shakes out to a well-rounded diet. To your point, fruits, vegetables, lean meats, and proteins, right? Like it does seem like all of these things. Like I went through a rabbit hole of doing my DNA and putting it through, I think it was Prometheus DNA, and it gives you some outputs. And I was like, that's really cool. I do this. And I was like, so wait, if I eat lean meats and proteins and a ton of fruits and vegetables, I'm pretty good. And that's kind of like what it kept.
Simple.
Yeah, right. Like it's to your point earlier, like if you say, hey, eat lean meats and proteins and a ton of fruits and vegetables, people will understand that. And it's pretty easy to follow. Like an ounce per pound of body weight for water, like pretty easy to follow. Yeah. Sustainability is the best ability, right?
Right.
So if you don't some people like overcomplicated because it makes them dial in and go hard. That's fine too, right? But the old sustainability is the best ability is kind of the approach.
And how detrimental is a cheat day for people that are trying to lose weight?
Yeah, we use 80-20, right? Like, listen, you have to be a human, right? Like, why else are you doing it? So, like, if you want to go out and you eat clean, you hydrate well, you get movement every day, you get some sunlight in your eyeballs in the morning, and you want to go out on a Friday night with your friends, that seems fair, right? Otherwise, what are we doing? So, do you need here's where I was talking to a buddy on the way here, old steel type. It just can't. Thursday night can't turn into Thursday, Friday, Saturday. Yeah. And that's the hard part for particular mindsets, right? Because he's like, I'm not built for moderation. And I was like, well, that's a problem. That's what we're talking about. That's why we're on the phone right now. So let's dial that in, right? So I think that's the piece. But yeah, there's nothing wrong there.
No, that's easy too. If Friday nights, your cheat night and then you go out Thursday night and then there's something else comes up Saturday. You're right. I mean, it's an easy rabbit hole to kind of go down.
I mean, you have to be, like I said, it's not just about you too. It's like your inner circle, right? Yeah. Like I remember doing the ketogenic diet for a while. My wife would just look at me and be like, for real? Like we're out to dinner right now. Right. Like, all right, fair enough.
Yeah, no bread.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Yeah, hold the wine. But no, it's just kind of shooter's choice there.
Okay. You had mentioned lights in your eyes are the first thing in the morning.
Yeah.
How important is that? Because I have heard, specifically stories related to like cortisol, getting light first thing, helping kind of build up the cortisol. So it reduces through the course of the day. So you've got better sleep at night.
Yeah.
How big of a thing is that?
Yeah. I think there's two pieces to it. Like, Huberman talks about it in depth, right? Get out there, 10, 20 minutes first thing in the morning would be great. It helps your circadian rhythm. The reality of it too is like, it's too easy not to do, right? Like it's just go outside and I'll couple it with, to my point earlier when you're asking like, what would you do in the morning? Depends how early you're up, right? So if you're up,
what about someone like me who wakes up at 5? I mean, the sun's not up for another, hour and a half, 2 hours.
Yeah. So for you could, well, depending on the temperature, right? Probably not right now, but like you could grab your first meal of the day outdoors, like on your patio and get some sunlight in your eyeballs, right? For folks who wake up a little later, like,
But at 5, there is no sun.
No, but later after
later.
But you train unfed, right?
Yeah.
So after you train, probably what, 6, 7?
Yeah.
Sun's coming up. You could eat your breakfast outdoors in your patio.
Okay.
And get some sunlight in your eyeballs.
Okay.
Right. So that's just, it's too easy not to do. That's kind of how I look at it. Like if I used to go to work and be there at 5:45, knock out a couple patients, well, then I'd break for meetings. I go outside and take a phone call, take take my glasses off and just take a phone call outdoors. Just, again, it's too easy not to do. And we talked about earlier, it's like land navigation, right? If it makes a 1% change, well, 1% change over 20 years is a pretty big difference.
Material, right?
Huge. That's like your investment account, right? So those little kind of things that stack become pretty important. And the cool part is, if you miss it, like, you don't need to beat yourself up over it, right? Just the next day, go outside and get some sun.
Do it again.
I think it's pretty easy, right?
Okay.
So little wins like that, like get a little bit of sunlight in the morning, go out there and do it. Like drink enough water. Like don't have a granola bar, eat an apple, right? Like little things like that you stack, change your life profoundly.
What about intermittent fasting? I mean, that's another thing that it seems to be the rage. And
yeah, I'll defer to the experts, right? So like a Stacy Sims for female athletes is a really good resource for folks to look into, because things like intermittent fasting and ketogenic diet hit different depending on gender. So what might be good for you or I may not be good for our wives, right? So I think that's super important to understand, because with like their cycles and things like that, it can have a negative impact. But intermittent fasting, you can see the studies. I mean, it does work well for body composition, right? And I do think as well, there's a component of restrictive eating. So like if you have this window to get it in and you need to hit your macronutrient profile and then it's done, like a lot of times a snack of Potaps and Rex comes out after 8 p.m., right? Like if my window is shut down and I'm sitting there at 10:30, a little bored, and I just simply know I can't eat, that's that, right? Versus if I'm not doing intermittent fasting and I've eaten pretty clean, but 10:30 rolls around, I'm still not tired. I'm like, I could make some popcorn. I'll use avocado oil so it's healthy. You know what I mean? Like it's just a different ball of wax. So I think from a lifestyle and behavioral choices standpoint, I think that's part of the benefit. And there are some metabolic components too. But I think the behavioral change piece is pretty important there.
To me, it seems like, and you alluded to 10 o'clock. I mean, if you only have a certain window to eat and get so much in, I mean, by the nature of it, you're probably going to end up doing some calorie restriction just because you don't have the same time. You're eating over a smaller window. And
if you get your calories in a clean way in that tight a window, you're going to be full.
Yeah.
Like there's going to be no hungry, right?
That's right. 10 o'clock rolls around. That's the last thing you want to see.
Yeah. And I mean, it's different. People do it different ways, like 16-8, depending on how you do it within your day. And sometimes it works out beautifully for schedules, right?
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, there is a level of restrictive piece there.
Okay. What about supplements? Multivitamins for years were great. And then there's some studies that came out that were conflicting to it. Now it seems like everything's kind of gone back the other way and multivitamins are great again. I mean, what do you recommend for supplementation and vitamins?
The big piece is they should all be third-party tested, right? And like NSF certified is really nice when there's some other third parties.
Yeah.
That's like the base. If it's not that, you shouldn't take it because there's just so much stuff out there, right? It's a Wild West still, right? So if it's not third party regulated and tested, you just shouldn't take it. All our dietitians will tell you outside of like some sort of pathological condition, like you should get it through your diet, right? And then we understand you can't, right? So then a really nice multivitamin, there are some AM and PM ones that have some different profiles to them are nice. Your proteins, your clean source of proteins, your wheys, those are nice, right? Collagen before you work out, nice. They shouldn't be the base of your nutritional profile, right?
Right.
Across the board. Like it should be, hey, I have a schedule that doesn't allow me to get this in. So then you can take your, not a plug, but like an Athletic Greens or something like that, right?
Okay.
But yeah,
that's appropriate. Every podcast out there says Athletic Greens.
I know, right?
Yeah, if they want to sponsor, feel free to.
Send it on over. But that's like you can enter in any type of thing, but you should have to. Your goal should always be to get it through your regular diet.
Okay.
And to a dietitian, that's usually the base level statement.
Okay. And then what about creatine? So
yeah.
No, I mean, obviously great for recovery, but also for cognitive enhancement as well.
Yeah. It's interesting, right? Back in the day, we would take it and be like, "Oh, don't do that." You know what I mean? Like, you're careful with your kidneys, and
Yeah.
and the reality, it's like the most well-studied supplement there is, right? And the recommendations are toggling now. It's 5 grams, perhaps it's going to go to 15 grams if it's not already there, right? And the cognitive piece is the interesting component, right? Basically helps from an energy deficit standpoint, helps feed the brain.
Mm-hmm.
So creatine's an interesting topic. I think there's still a lot of, like, you talk to folks about it, they still have like the mentality like, careful there. It's like, listen, I'll be more careful about taking a multivitamin that isn't third-party tested than taking creatine. You know what I mean? Like,
Okay.
as long as it's third-party tested, I believe the new recommendation is 15 grams, but previous was 5. Like, it's too easy not to do. It doesn't taste bad. Like, it's not like some of the proteins we've had.
I mean, we've been studying for like 40 years, right?
It's incredible. Yeah, like, it has so much literature to support it now. But even you talk to some physicians and they're a little sketchy on it, right? They're like, it's careful on it. So I think as the literature keeps getting out and it keeps getting democratized, right? Some person might listen to this podcast and then dig in and see that there's a humongous body of realistically only positive literature to support it. And I think that'll keep dispelling the negative myth around it.
I wonder if the negative came from, because in the early days, I mean, you had to overload.
Yeah.
And then, I mean, just talk about like intestinal, just disaster, right?
Yeah. I mean, and I think the part of it too, back in the day, is it was always mixed with a bunch of other stuff.
Yeah.
It was like, cherry grape flavor. You know what I mean? And then you look at the components and it was like, all right, there's 600 milligrams of caffeine and some other stuff. And then at the bottom, it's like, oh, there's 5 grams of creatine. You know what I mean?
Right, yeah.
So I think that was really the issue with it at the time. And now it's just a clean product, right?
Yeah.
When I, no plug, but I use Thorn, right? I'll use Thorn and I'll throw it in. Like, it doesn't taste like anything. I can throw it in my water pretty easy.
Yeah,
throw it in a shake. Like, it's easy. Because it's just creatine.
Right.
I think it got sucked into the other stuff.
Okay. What about deliberate cold exposure, cold plunge versus hot sauna?
Yeah.
Both. I mean, pros, cons?
Yeah. I mean, it depends who you ask, right? Like, I enjoy it. And cold's an interesting one, right? Because you get the dopamine hit and timing of day matters, right? So, like, if you were, for instance, somebody that has a hard time sleeping, like, later in the day might not be great, right? Because you'll get up and you'll warm up.
Yeah.
And that might make you wake up versus what you don't want to do, right? They're the exact opposite of the reason why we turn our house down to, my wife doesn't like this, but like, 62 to 68 degrees.
Yeah.
We compromise around 70, 71, depending on who goes to bed.
That's what we're in our household too.
Yeah. She's like, my nose is cold. I'm like, perfect. That's the right temp.
Fighting over the fan. I don't know if you have that battle too.
Yeah, I have a bed jet on my side, so I can crank it down. But it can negatively impact your sleep, right? So that person might want to get it first thing in the morning, right? So you have the cognitive component, and then people just feel better, right? There are some pieces, right? Like, if you're doing a hypertrophy phase or whatever, you might not want to jump in right after, because it could mute their positive response of the cascades. Yeah. I think, and I think it's about 4 hours. If you wait like 4 hours and you hop in, it's probably not going to have any negative impact there.
Okay.
So you don't have to avoid it if that's something that makes you feel better, has a positive impact on your sleep, right? The heat exposure was like the sauna, like the Finnish studies came out, like, pretty slick, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, when you're talking like significant reductions of all-cause mortality for jumping into a traditional sauna, seems like an easy win, right? And everybody likes the sauna.
Sure.
So you go in, you crank it up. The number, I think, is 178 degrees, right?
Because you do hit a point to where, I mean, it becomes negative.
Yeah, you have to be smart, right? So if you have health conditions of which, when you have that large vasodilation, you might have an issue. Like, you probably need to see your physician first before you jump in there, of course, right? That's same for cold, right? Because there's a rapid dilation or constriction of vasculature.
Sure.
So if you're a cardiovascular patient, like, you're going to want to talk to your physician before you do that, right? For healthy folks, getting in there, and if I can reduce my chance of like cardiovascular stroke by jumping into a sauna with a buddy and talking for 20, 30 minutes, seems like an easy W. Infrareds, I think we'll see how the literature does there, right? But I think, to your point, those are just easy wins, right?
Okay.
And if you feel better, and you might sleep better, you're more likely to work out the next day. You're more likely to eat a little cleaner at lunchtime. Like, it's just kind of like we talked about.
Builds, right?
Yeah, it's like small stacks. Get a little sunlight, drink a little water. Like, you start stacking these easy habits. Then as a human, you start showing out a little bit better.
Okay.
Yeah, no, it's no one thing though. Like if you were to eat poorly, not commit to a decent sleep hygiene schedule, and then jump into a cold plunge, that's probably not going to do it, right? And I think sometimes people hear that and they're like, "Yeah, I'm good. Like I'm just going to go hit it and I'll be fine." It's like, no, that's not really how it works.
Especially when they hear that, like, the fat loss component of, the cold plunge.
Yeah, you get some visceral, some components there.
Right.
It won't. It's not.
Go eat some Taco Bell and go jump in the cold plunge.
Exactly.
I'm good.
Yeah. You shouldn't be chilling out the meat sweats with a cold plunge, right? That won't get there. So.
So kind of going back to, you sitting down with, a new client, finding their why. What's the process going about, figuring out what their training protocol is, nutritional? I mean, we talked about wearables, blood tests. I mean, what's part of the profile?
Yeah. So like when somebody walks into a facility, they'll meet with each discipline, right? So they'll come in, they'll talk to the dietitian, they'll do a body comp assessment, whether it's DEXA or some caliber work. And then we'll understand where they're at and where they want to be. They'll have a discussion around sensitivities if they know that they have any. If they don't, and there's a suspicion, they'll send out a test for food sensitivities. And then they'll go ahead and say food preferences, because that matters, right?
Sure.
Like we had a gentleman several years ago who we curate their meals for him. So it's kind of we're setting up for success, right? So when we curate their profile, we have in our Arizona, we have chefs there. So they'll make all of their foods.
Okay.
In Gulf Breeze, we use the staff there, and they'll also make all of their food. So they just get it delivered to them with everything they need.
Oh, that's fantastic.
They select their preferences, and then the behind the scenes work, and it lands there. All their pre and post workout supplementation also is curated based on that conversation, and they just walk in and their shakes on the thing with their name on it, and they get it, right?
Okay.
So
very cool.
It's all very curated, right? And then they go to physical therapy where we live, and we break the body down. We look at some big movements, touch toes, bend backwards, rotate, squat, things like that, right? And then we break it down by the piece. So we say, hey, that's a big movement. It looks wonky. I don't know why. So then every person, we break them down to 22 different pieces. We do it standard for everybody. And we look at active versus passive. So like, for instance, if they say, hey, lift your leg up, they're on their back, lift your leg up straight, and it goes up 20 degrees. And then we say, hey, relax, let me lift it. And I can lift it up to 90, right? The hamstring's not tight. There's something else going on. There's a software issue, right? So because we don't have time to waste, if we sat there and had them stretch their hamstrings, that would be an unjustified use of their time.
Okay.
And we're wasting their time, which they don't have. So that's why we get really fine-tuned on our approach from a physical therapy standpoint. From a performance standpoint, we'll go ahead and hand them over to performance after PT. And that's where they get a series of go or no goes, right? So we'll do jumps for like counter movement and hops. So we'll understand, but if they have a bad wheel, hey, can't jump them.
Can't,
right. We'll do like Nord board testing for hamstring strength or posterior chain readiness. So we'll do some sports science testing. And then after that, all the disciplines come together. And that's where a pretty cool conversation, and we put all their input. We have a athlete management system. We put everything in. And behind the scenes, we have a numbering system where each athlete, they would have a series of particular movements. So linear movement, multi-directional movement, upper body lift, lower body lift. And we have a numbering system based on what we found out in their intake profile. So you open it up and it's, red, yellow, green. Mm-hmm. Green, they're good. Yellow, hey, here's left and right parameter we need to pay attention to. Red is they're not going to do that thing.
Okay.
So for each athlete that walks in the door, we go through that iterative process, and it changes by the day, right? Like a week later, if they come in and that thing's better, moving better, structurally better, then we change it from a red to a yellow, and the coach knows they have these particular loading parameters, right? Are they cool to do repetitive jumps yet? No, but can they do some isometric loading and some different position work? Yes, right? So we do that for each person that comes in because what we can't do is miss. When you have 8 weeks to train for combine, if you have a military person that's coming for 2 to 4 weeks, depending on what they're up to, if there's somebody that's going out to deploy, like you can't waste, we owe it to them not to waste their time. Okay. So we do a lot of behind the scenes work.
Now, so you mentioned jumping a couple times. Is there an age limit? I know everybody's subjective based upon, their current physical condition, but is there an age where you shouldn't be doing a lot of jumping? Because I will every once in a while see in the gym, they got the box out. There's someone's like 55 years old, and I'm like, you're going to hurt yourself. No. Okay.
I mean, it's so person specific, right? Okay. So I would say, if you have poor balance, probably jumping up to something is not the best thing, or jumping down from something even worse.
We've all seen the videos online.
Correct. Yeah. But if you're vestibularly intact and you're training over a regular period, you're a well-trained human, jumping can be a foundational component, right? It's plyometric. So as we kind of break into our systems, we do like pillar prep, like a warm-up, right? Movement prep, which is get your body moving in 3 planes at different intensities. And then like plyo or ballistics would jump in there next. That can look different for each person though. Like you could do a relatively static, we call drop to base, where you start arms up and you kind of like drop to a base position, a squat position, like you're pulling the parachute straps. That might be your level of jumping, right?
Okay.
And that might progress to going from 2 legs to 1 legs. So then you've proven you can stabilize very well, right? And then it might go to jumping up to a small box. Jumping up might actually be easier than jumping down, right? Because you don't have to do the down part of it from a gravity and force absorption standpoint. So I think where you're on that carousel ride, but I do think it's important for folks, is there an upper age, maybe, right? Like if you're 75 but again, your physical attributes will dictate what you should do. But I think
that's fair.
The ability to absorb force and propel force is probably a predictor of health, right? To a certain extent, like lean body mass. So don't give up on it. I'm so hesitant to even answer because I don't want to be like, at 55, you should not do it when
you're done. Yeah.
Like, here's the thing. If you're 60 and you got to cross a road real quick, so the car's coming, like there has to be an element of force absorption and propulsion.
That's fair.
And if you're doing some level of training there, whether it's a drop to base or repetitive box jumps, you're helping yourself from a survival human standpoint, right? So I think it's just what you're doing matters, like where you're at in that plyo or jumping progression.
If you had a dashboard for professionals and key performance benchmarks, like what would be 4 or 5 things that you would focus on?
Yeah, I think body composition is important.
And that's a certain percentage of body fat?
Yeah, and that varies based on age and gender, right?
Okay.
So
where should I be? Ideally, where
you're what, 35?
Well, thank you.
I got you.
47.
Yeah. I mean, again, it depends on your historicals, right? But like a healthy spend about you're 12 to 15, right? Okay. 17, like it depends where you're at, right? And there's some key components there, right? Like you want to have your medical components too, like blood pressure, cholesterol, right? Like I think those become markers that are important. Some level.
Is that something you monitor as well through?
So for folks that come in, we don't necessarily do that. For folks that are at risk, we will work a third party for blood testing and keep those. For blood pressure, we do check that because some particular techniques, you got to make sure they don't have high blood pressure before you're doing it, like with the neck and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So there's components there. Like grip strength is an easy one to do. That could be measured differently. Like, total body hang is a nice one because it's grip plus the rest of your whole body. Like how resilient are you compared to your body weight? It's kind of important, right? We used to do it just old school with like a grip strength tester. So those are pretty good. And then some level of cardiovascular, right? And that could look different. It could be your VO2 max, like your indirect on your Garmin, which will give you a relative number. I think that's important. Or you could kick it old school, like here's my 5K time, right? For me, this is a good number. If I'm falling left or right of that, then I need to do something else, right? So for me, a 5K, if I'm gonna run in like 25 minutes and all of a sudden I'm running 30 minutes, well, that's a red flag, right? Yeah. So I think as long as you have some sort of easily measurable personal marker that hits strength, some level of cardiovascular piece, some level of body composition. And then if I were to do the last one, it would be how well you're paying attention to your sleep, right? So are you intentional? So you can measure it, right? We talked about it earlier. Whoop, Garmin, Aura. There's a whole bunch of ways to measure it. Yeah. But do you care about it, right? And I think that's a big thing. So all of a sudden, if you're sleeping, your traditional 7 to 9, and all of a sudden you're running hard and you're only sleeping 4 over a period of time, you probably need to pay attention to that.
Okay.
So behavioral wise, I think those are the 4 to 5. I think I love 4 to 5 that I would pay attention to. How you measure it's kind of shooter's choice. And there's, to your point earlier, there's so many different ways to do it now that it becomes like a little eye-washy. So it has to like matter to you, right? So I'd say those are 4 or 5 things.
I appreciate that. And I want to talk about Eagle Fund.
Yeah.
Let's dig into that.
Yeah. So like when people see Exos as a company, like you see when we're on ESPN and stuff, it's just with professional athletes, right? We're blessed to support 96 guys this year get drafted in the NFL draft.
That's amazing.
Right?
Yeah,
pretty cool, right?
Yeah, very cool.
It like represents about a third of it now. But we also have the Eagle Fund is there to support those who serve us, right? So we have a partnership with the Andrews Research and Education Fund, and they're a 501(c), and essentially what we partner with them, and we create an experience for operators and direct support to come on in. And what they do is they live with us for generally about 4 weeks, can be longer depending on what they need. Again, they get the same curated meals. They go through, they get treatment every day. They get training every day with our coaches. And the idea is they've put in so much and they get banged up, right?
Sure.
And the military itself has done a phenomenal job of building up their programs through like H2F in the Army and POTIF through SOCOM.
Mm-hmm.
They've done a phenomenal job of supporting the troops. We're there to be an outside source to further support them. So they can kind of, in generally, we'll do some in Fishhawk as well as Gulf Breeze. Gulf Breeze is our main spot. So they'll come and they'll actually live with us up there. And I say that they'll stay at like the Portofino or something. And they'll come in and their whole day is with us. They're there 4 to 6 hours for the day. They eat there, they train there, they recover there between the cold plungers and the saunas. We have massage therapists. And we've been doing it for a shade over 15 years now. And it's pretty cool. We just ran a data poll the other day. The data's on 1,500. We're probably more like 1,800 folks now because it's a little dated, but like we want to make sure we're doing something positive. So like the numbers like 97% report an improved quality of life.
Wow.
And it's cool. That could be 1%.
That's
right.
Great.
It could be one. So we're like, hey, well, what percentage of quality of life?
Yeah.
And they say the average improvement is about 65%.
Incredible.
So, and about 77% report improved sleep.
Okay.
Which is great for that population because sleep can be impacted for a variety of reasons, right? Not just, there's some stuff there. And then body comp, like 92% showing improvement in body composition. And we'll do some functional movement screens, the FMS, and their average improvement. And for folks who don't know it, it doesn't matter much, but it's like a 4% change in 4 points, which shows they're moving better, they're sleeping better, their perceived quality of life's improving. And I feel like that's the least we can do for that population because they've done so many things. And for a while, I ran the Human Performance Shop at Special Operations Command Central, and that's where I was always passionate about it, but that's where kind of hanging out with the guys and gals every day for 6-7 years.
Sure. Getting to know them, hearing their stories.
Yeah. And you know, you really learn a lot about the sacrifices.
Yeah.
And that's where it's like, man, the least we can do is lean in here and do the absolute best we can to support them.
Well, those are some incredible results. So, I mean, I appreciate that. My dad was a Navy guy.
Yeah.
How does that tie into the Accelerated Return to Duty program?
Yeah. So the Accelerated Return to Duty program is for those special operators. And direct support. So there's different funding streams. So for instance, the Eagle Fund is with Andrews, right? And they do a phenomenal job of leaning in and supporting. Sometimes there are other benevolent groups like Navy SEAL Foundation or Green Beret Foundation. And they say, hey, we want to send a guy over. So Accelerated Return to Duty is essentially the same construct and program that we run. It's just depending on where the funding comes from.
Got it. Okay.
Yep.
Jim, this has been really great. Anything else you want to share with the listeners before we wrap it up?
No, I appreciate you having me. And then, like I said, the Eagle Fund, the Andrews Research guys are doing a phenomenal job with the men and women. So it's a pleasure to help support them. If anybody else has a desire to do so, please just look me up.
Yeah, support them. How do they do that, Jim? So,
they can look up Andrews Research, AREF, and then Eagle Fund online. And there's contact information there. And if not, they can just reach out directly to me via email, which is just jgodin @teamexos.com.
Okay. And if there's an executive out there that just wants to, hit peak performance, find you on exos.com as well?
Yep. Send a note to that email and we're happy to support you and have a conversation. At the very least, we can get a phone call and have a meet and greet.
Great. Well, Jim Godin, thanks for coming on Money Market.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Yeah, appreciate it.
Appreciate you, man.
You can find the Money Market podcast and Bank of Tampa online and well as on YouTube, LinkedIn, X, Facebook, and Instagram. Before you leave, make sure you hit that like, follow, subscribe button, and we'll be sure to see you around in the Money Market.